Mario, tell me when to start with introduction.
Okay, you want to wait?
Well, maybe 1 more minute. We have a nice number already. There are 19 people already here. Okay, shall I start?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'll introduce our guest today. Our guest today is Dr. Małgorzata Stolarska-Fronia, who is an art historian, curator, and academic teacher. Currently, Małgorzata, I will call her Goshka as everybody knows her, is a researcher in the Institute for Slavistic and Slavic Studies at the Potsdam University in Germany. Dr. Stolarska-Fronia was a former head of the scientific department at Polin Museum of the History of Polish Jews in Warsaw. She was also involved in designing the museum's core exhibition as a curator of the 17th century gallery. She's the author of the book about participation of Breslau, Wrocław Jews in the artistic and cultural life of the city from the emancipation until 1933. The book was published in Polish in Warsaw in 2008 already. And she also is the author of several articles devoted to the issue of modern and avant-garde art in the Jewish culture. In 2003, Dr. Stolarska-Fronia was a visiting fellow at the Center for German Jewish Studies at Sussex University in England. In 2021 and 2023, she was visiting professor at the Augsburg University in Germany. Her main fields of interest are Jewish avant-garde art as part of an international network, history and culture of Breslau Jews, Polish-Jewish-German relations and cultural contacts, and migration experience and its expression in the artistic activity. So I'm very happy to have this ability or opportunity, better to say, to introduce Goshka to our audience today. And she's going to talk about one of these forgotten women or several forgotten women artists that we are trying to rehabilitate through our seminar, not through all the lectures, but some of them. So Goshka, floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Miriam, for this kind introduction. Breslau, as some of you know, is not Breslau anymore in terms of the name and also in terms of the borders. It used to be a German city before the Second World War. And after 1945, it's a Polish city of Wrocław. And I was born, raised and also studied my PhD, finished at the Wrocław University, and I always felt that this story of the Breslau Jews and Breslau Jewish artists and art collectors is still has to be rediscovered and told again. The German city of Breslau before 1945 was known as the metropolis of East Prussia. As the sixth largest city in the Kaiserreich, it also had one of the strongest Jewish communities after Berlin. As a result of border shifts after World War II, Breslau was renamed Wrocław and is now one of the largest cities in Poland. Both the German and the German Jewish history of the city, unlike the situation even 20 years ago, has become increasingly familiar to locals and tourists alike. Despite this, there are still gaps in research and knowledge about the city's cultural life before 1945. One such gap concerns women artists at the Breslau Art Academy, including number of female painters, graphic artists, and sculptors with Jewish backgrounds who were particularly active in the city's cultural life, especially after 1980. Just one explanation, this is a very early photo presenting women art students and professors of, at that time, King's Art and Crafts School in Breslau, and these are not Jewish, just to explain it, but because the history of the Jewish Breslau artists are somehow inscribed or intertwined with the history of the general Breslau female artists. Nearly 20 years ago, the generation of artists born at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century was already referred to as verschollen. And this is the German term meaning missing or lost. Yet they still remain forgotten on multiple levels, not only as female artists whose presence in artistic life and art writing was, with few exceptions, particularly scarce due to the conservative and male-oriented tastes of the time. Their heritage also suffered from plunder or dispersion due to the tumultuous events of the World War II. In the case of Breslau Jewish female artists, the fact that women, including Jewish women, were late to enter the city's artistic life, doing so only at the beginning of the 20th century, meant the efforts were further thwarted by racial persecution starting in 1933. Some managed to escape Nazi Germany, many did not survive the Holocaust. Most of their works have been lost, and their art remains rarely discussed. This lecture will present 3 female Jewish artists from Breslau who were active in the first 2 decades of the 20th century. Paula Grünfeld, whom portrait we do not have, we do not know how she looked like. The same with Sarah Margot Abraham and Käthe Ephraim Markus. Relatively detailed press mentions, catalogs, and a small, very small number of preserved works allow us to examine more closely their legacy. The lecture will also highlight their presence in Breslau's cultural life through their ties to Jewish women's organizations, which constituted a whole new area of female activity. In 1908, Breslau branch of Jüdischer Frauenbund, Union of Jewish Women, was established in Breslau, led by strong personalities, Paula Ollendorf, Beate Gutmann, Rosa Mark, and Hedwig Engel. The union was of great significance for the Breslauer Jewish community, especially Jewish girls and women, as it provided a wide range of social help, from organizing professional courses and supporting education of young adults, care for orphans, healthcare, etc. Jewish women began practicing liberal professions, and many pursued art in addition to activity in women's organizations. In this sense, women's art in Breslau was closely intertwined with the social changes taking place in the city and the new role of Jewish women. The liberalization of teaching programs at the Breslau Art Academy led to an increasing intake of female students who, as of 1902, even had their own association, the Verband der Schlesische Künstlerinnen, the Association of Silesian Female Artists. Talented and professionally active women were made increasingly frequent appearances at all kinds of exhibitions organized by Breslau art organizations, like Artists Union or the group 1922, the Expressionist group of Breslau. Particularly in the late 1920s, they also took part in Wohnung- und Werkraum exhibitions that presented a modern approach to art and design in the spirit of Bauhaus. Fighting for equal rights to education and the exercise of liberal professions, women founded various organizations, including artistic ones. This generation of artists, active across all of Silesia and not only in Breslau, includes a large number of Jewish names. Female artists of Jewish origin attended the Breslauer Academy, and they were recognized both within a general city's art scene as well as in the circle of Jewish organizations, art critics, and art collectors. The talent of several of these artists was recognized by contemporary critics, and the reputation of some extended beyond their local community. Interest in fine arts was strong since at least the mid-19th century among Jewish bourgeois families with assimilationist leanings. It was in good taste to provide young Jewish ladies with an education in music and art via private tutors. Clara Sachs is the most typical example here, but it should be remembered that many young girls from Jewish homes attended Eugen Spiro's School of Portraiture. Eugen Spiro was also a Jewish artist of Jewish origin, and he was called Breslauer Liebermann, as he was the representative of this impressionist style on the Breslau art scene, but he was also a teacher of many young Jewish female artists until they could attend the art school. Those who wanted to go beyond this passing whim joined the Breslau Academy and became part of the Jewish Bohème, gathered around Otto Müller, who is known to have had a romantic relationship with his student Irene Altmann. Irene's portrait figures in Müller's works. It may be that her ethnic background also inspired his Jewish family, or alternative title, the Polish family, in which the figure of Müller's beloved also appears. A small lithograph, which you see, I think on your left, I see it on my left, serves as a graphic rendition of painting created by the artist shortly after arriving in Breslau in 1990. I'm sure that Otto Müller's figure as an artist is familiar to you. He was a member of Berliner expressionistic group Die Brücke. The central figure on this lithograph is a young girl breastfeeding a child. She is seated on a bench in an alley that ends at the rough brick wall. She is barefoot and scantily clad, with her shoulders wrapped in a cloak that barely covers her exposed chest. Her dark, unevenly cut hair is surrounded by radiating lines that form a nebulous-like halo. She gazes at the viewer, seemingly casual, yet with a deliberate intensity. Standing nearby and completing this peculiar family portrait is a tall man dressed in a dark, long coat and hat, which sharply contrasts with the woman's partially unclothed figure. His dark beard and downcast eyes enchants his somber demeanor. Beneath the bench, where the woman nurses a child, a huddled dog lies, a poignant symbol of homelessness and the transient lifestyle. Art historians has often interpreted this painting as a reflection of the brief and controversial relationship between a professor at the Breslau Academy of Fine Arts and his student, who came from the bourgeois Jewish family. The relationship lasted less than 2 years, and it is reputed that her father, the father of Irene Altmann, disapproved of the liaison, concerned that his daughter's partner was not Jewish. The subjectification of the woman as a painting subject is reinforced here by the emphasis on the exotic and Eastern origins of Otto Müller's lover. Interestingly, Müller's stereotyping led to Irene Altmann being associated not only with the Ostjuden, a group with whom the Jews of Breslau had little in common, but also with the Sinti and Roma, commonly referred to as gypsies. This attitude, along with the hierarchical relationship between male and female artists, was fairly typical at the time. It also contributes to the difficulties in reconstructing the biographies and achievements of female artists. The case of Irena Altman sadly illustrates the pattern. During her studies, she was deeply influenced of Otto Müller's style and technique. However, yielding to her father's wishes, she married the Jewish doctor in Berlin and subsequently gave up painting. But we know that in 1920, she participated in the Junge Schlesien, in the exhibition of young Silesian artists at the Lichtenberg Gallery in Breslau, but her art remains largely unknown. I think there is only one lithograph known of her, but the fact that Otto Müller used her figure, objectifying it obviously in his painting, made her, so to speak, famous. Some artists, however, have managed to establish independent names in the Breslau art scene. I will talk about a few of them. Paula Grünfeld came from Görlitz. After World War I, she enrolled at the Breslau Academy and became a student of Oskar Mols. She was a prolific artist, taking part in nearly every young artist show, a member of Künstlerbund Schlesien, the Union of Silesian Artists, and participant in the Autumn Exhibition of Young Art in 1920 and 1922, at which her woodcuts were featured. She belonged to the Gruppe 1922, which shared the ideals of the expressionist group Die Brücke. She was one of the organizers of the Ausstellung Junge Schlesien, was the exhibition of Young Silesia in 1925. She also took part in union of Silesian artists and various exhibitions in the town. In spite of her connection to Oskar Moll's workshop, and for those of you who are not familiar who the Oskar Moll was, this is one of his paintings. She was referred to as self-taught and autodidactic in German, who had developed a highly original style of her works. Though close in her style to expressionist realism, her works, particularly some of her portraits, are characterized by deformation, the disruption of static objects and distorted perspective. The Breslau art historian Franz Landsberger said of her that she was capable of bringing out turbulent, never quite mature effects. And I would like you to pay attention to this very specific discourse also about the female art. Her style has also been described as fairy tale-like, somewhat unreal, and the more daring reviews compared her technique to that of Jawlensky and Picasso, or even Matisse, due to her ability to preserve, and I quote, tension between reality and illusion. One may wonder whether this discourse about her art, although supported by so-called good intentions, was not nevertheless degrading, since her art appeared to them as typically feminine. Her exhibited works largely included floral compositions, portrait studies, and landscapes. Yet, Paula Grünfeld was above all a gifted colorist, and as one of the titles of the articles about her sounded, Farbharmoniker, the one that can find the harmony in colors. One review called her painting unconventional, unacademic, and this is also, I'm sure some of you are aware, also typical for the discourse about the female art at that time. An academic was supposedly be a positive description, but in fact, it meant that, yes, this women were mostly self-taught as they, even if they were accepted to the art academy, they could not always participate in all the classes. And this is also not a common knowledge, because they were officially students of the art academy, but they were forbidden to participate in some classes. Her work said to be characterized by harmony between content, composition, and color, fusing the spiritual and the material. She was praised for achieving harmony between color rhythm and the painterly plane. Her painting was of expressionist extraction. Her career reached its peak in 1930s, just as her works appeared in exhibitions bringing together Jewish artists and other Breslau artists of both sexes, including Isidor Aschheim, Heinrich Tischler, Käthe Ephraim Markus, Ludwig Meidner, Eugen Spierer, Willy Braun, and Siegfried Raboschin. These are all the names of the artists from different generations who were active on the Breslau art scene. Her popularity and unique position in artistic circles are confirmed by announcements made in 1934 in the Breslau Jewish press of the opening of her studio to the public. The announcement was accompanied by an article encouraging members of the public to visit the artist who lives, and I quote, "in great silence, nearly in fear, shut off from the outside world." The invitation included a description of her studio, designated as a, I quote, "still life laboratory," due to its being full of stones, minerals, butterflies, shells, and feathers, but first and foremost, paintings, watercolors, oils, and pastels. These objects, illuminated by incoming sunlight, no longer appeared as an array of useless odds and ends to the reviewer, but, as she noted, an interplay of forms reflected in the harmonious works of the artist, once again hailed a mistress of color. Though often mentioned in connection with various exhibitions, Grünfeld never had a solo show. She was nevertheless highly regarded by contemporary critics and was one of the only two women to receive biographical entries in the volume published by Künstlerbund Schlesiens. She was murdered in Auschwitz, having been deported from Breslau in March 1943. Her works, preserved in fragmentary form, are known mostly from black and white reproductions in the interwar press, which makes it impossible to appreciate and analyze the color qualities. Another name is cited just as often as Paula Grünfeld's in the annals of Jewish female art in Breslau, that of Sarah Margot Abraham. And I will unfortunately have to leave it with this empty slide, because we do not know how she looked like, and we do not know, none of her works ever emerged on the art market or was ever found in any of the collections of the museums, which means I will tell you about the artist and I will tell you about her artworks, but in words of contemporary critics. Born in 1902, she represented the youngest generation who embarked on their careers in the mid-1920s. Abraham was mainly a watercolor painter. She also worked with textiles. She mostly executed female art portraits, landscapes, and floral compositions. It is with this kind of repertoire that she appeared in the exhibition of Jewish artists held at the Lessing Lodge in 1925. Her work was also featured in the 1926 summer exhibition In Scheidniger Park, this is the largest park in Breslau, which had also an art gallery in the 1927. In the 1930s, she belonged to the Kulturkreis, the circle of artists, the circle of culture, founded by Jewish artists, which also included other Jewish artists from Breslau. Yes, in 1935, Marcus appeared in the memorable exhibition of Jewish artists in Berlin, where she showed her painting Young Woman with a Cat. The last presentation of her works took place in 1937 at an exhibition of Breslau Jewish artists in Berlin, where aside from the above-mentioned painting were featured her landscapes and still lifes, mostly watercolors. According to a review penned by one of her Breslau friends, Isidor Aschheim, also a painter, she was to be appreciated particularly for her delicate sketches of heads, while her final works were said to bear traces of a willingness to tackle oil painting. The dearth of biographical information about Abraham makes it impossible to establish precise data, including on whether she attended the Breslau Academy. The last bit of information concerning her presence in Breslau comes from the records of the tax office related to the confiscation of Jewish property by the Nazis in 1942. Her last registered address was 5 Zimmerstraße, the street still exists in currently Wrocław, where she rented a flat. She was unmarried. Her final occupation was recorded as private drawing tutor, and the valuables left in her flat included a set of 20 of her own watercolors. Abraham herself had filled out the form and signed it with the date 6th of April, 1942. A week later, she was deported to the transit ghetto in Izbica and probably killed soon after. The most active female artist in that period was probably Käthe Ephraim Marcus. This is her. This painter, born in Breslau in 1892, had several masters, Eugen Spiro, Lovis Corinth, and Max Beckmann. As a young girl, she had also met Käthe Kollwitz. Encouraged by the same Otto Müller, mentioned at the beginning of this lecture, she went to Paris and studied art there. Having returned from France, she settled in Breslau, becoming active in the city's artistic life. She made her Breslau debut in 1921 at the Lessing Lodge, where her works were displayed alongside those of other Breslau Jewish artists, Isidor Aschheim, Siegfried Labosch, Ludwig Meidner, Eugen Spiro, Heinrich Tischer, and mentioned already Sarah Margot Abraham. In 1929, her works were featured in the collective exhibition Young Silesia, where she exhibited, among others, featured in the collective, among others, her Paris street studies and portraits presented as the outcome of her stay in France and recognized by critics as the final crystallization of her style. In the late 1920s, she took part in a series of exhibitions, including an exhibition of Silesian art in Berlin in 1928. She also had a solo display at the Gallery Neumann Nierendorf in Berlin in October 1928. Like Eugen Spiro and Isi Aschheim, she was featured in the Künstlerbund exhibition, the Union of Artists of Breslau, where 2 of her works, Ladies in Waiting and Jerusalem, were shown. In 1930, she moved to Düsseldorf and became part of the Rhine Group. But to go back, in 1917, she married Dr. Josef Marcus, a Zionist activist and a founder of Blau-Weiß youth organization. Marriage did not stop her from painting, and she also became socially engaged, close to the circles of Jüdische Frauenbund in Breslau. Twice she visited the British Mandate of Palestine in 1925 for the inauguration of the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and second time in 1932 for the Maccabean Games. Her landscapes, portraits, and studies of children were thought to carry social message. And this is her self-portrait with her 3 children, 1927. Apparently, this painting survived. And this black-white image you see is the reproduction of the same painting published in Ost und West, in Menorah, journal in 1932, I guess. Menorah was the Jewish German magazine. So this painting was already known and appreciated at this time. And for these portraits of children, Ephraim Marcus was often called a successor of Käthe Kollwitz, whom she herself sought to emulate. According to contemporary critics, her studies of children in different situations or of mothers with children are a record of spirituality and express a wealth of emotions, such as, I quote, mystery and playfulness and loneliness. The simple message, as expressed in representations of children, had the advantage of complete lack of affectation and instead reverberated with painterly and psychological truth, which made her paintings absolutely convincing. Nevertheless, it should be mentioned that one review by Kurt Freyer attributes this original and at the same time admired touch to the fact that she painted, I quote, her immediate surroundings, her natural environment, children. This commonplace patriarchal rhetoric even made critics attribute infantile traits, such as wide open eyes, to her adult portraits. Nevertheless, looking at many of Käthe Ephraim Marcus portraits today, it is difficult to agree with the interpretation of this early critic. A type of counter-response to the simplified portrait of Ephraim Marcus, who by her choice of subject matter portraits of children had been classed in the artificial current of the so-called female painting, and was written by Louis Strauss Ernst, who published a short characterization of painters' work in the Jewish weekly Menorah. In the article, she examined representations of Chinese, Roma, and Jewish children in Käthe Ephraim Marcus' work. She also discussed her depictions of children from a Jerusalem nursery and portraits of prominent Breslauers. The latter are particularly numerous. In addition to Arnold Ulitz, a Breslau writer, Ephraim Marcus also rendered Paula Ollendorf, well known in charitable circles, a founder and member of the board of Jewish Women's Union, a feminist and social activist who ran a nursery in Breslau. As of 1918, Ollendorf also took part in meetings of the city council. Ephraim Marcus, whose young models were often associated with charitable women's organizations run by the Breslauer branch of Women's Union, was close to the Jüdische Frauenbund, as attested by her portrayal of Ollendorf, an eminent representative of the union in the Breslau after Beate Gutmann. Her unfortunately lost, lifelike portrait bears no trace of idealization. The viewer is faced with a lean figure, her head and face slightly dropping and turned delicately to the right, with large gray-rimmed eyes, which pensively, wearily look straight ahead. The charismatic and easily recognizable face of Paula Ollendorf has gained even more vivid expression in Marcus's painting. There is no pomp or artificiality here, as often found in portraits of famous people. Instead, we encounter the opposite. The glass of water set in front of the Breslau Chancellor, the records and documents strewn before her give the impression of someone interrupted in the midst of work. Such elements were rarely found, even in portraits of men. In this case, we can surely talk of a new image of woman, no longer posing with flowers or children as her chief attributes. Paula Ollendorff is shown as a professionally and intellectually active person portrayed without embellishment, which makes her look nearly ascetic, although the viewer senses that here is an exceptional individual. This was doubtless not intentional on the part of the artist, and the idealistic portrait was intended to show to what extent the role of women in society, previously limited to housework, had changed. Paula Ollendorff, who became a public figure, sat on the city council and devoted herself to intellectual and social work above all else, was a new model of professional and personal achievement for women. Käthe Ephraim Marcus's unpretentious portrait of the Breslau activist stands out among other female art productions, just as Ollendorff's personality and activity were exceptional at the time. The painting is an important record of the changes occurring both within the Jewish community and Breslau itself. Like other Jewish artists from Breslau, Käthe Ephraim Marcus benefited from the artistic patronage of Isma Littmann, whose oil portrait by her is currently in the collection of Silesian Museum in Görlitz, in Germany. The Jewish lawyer and lover of expressionist art is shown in a natural pose against a nearly natural background. Ephraim Marcus portrays Littmann's face with her characteristic realism and psychological intuition. The art collector's outfit is the most intricate part of the painting, branded with angular brushstrokes which introduce movement and the wealth of color shades of brown into this area of the canvas. The painting is one of a few preserved images of the tragically deceased lawyer and bears traces of the expressionist style of Käthe Ephraim Marcus. Marcus also pursued landscape painting, still popular at that time, and her landscapes, aside those she brought from Paris in the 1930s, include those of Oriental towns and exotic places following her return from Palestine and Egypt. Jewish circles viewed Käthe as a native Silesian artist, as evidenced, among others, by the already cited articles from Menorah. In 1933, she emigrated to England with her husband, and this is seemingly an image of her mother. 1933, a very tragic date in the history of German Jews and the beginning of the harsh persecution, the beginning also of the emigration of German Jews. And this is apparently one of the evidences that Käthe Ephraim Marcus left in her art. She, as I said, 1933, emigrated to England with her family, settling in Jerusalem in 1935, where she continued to make art. After she arrived to the British Minded for Palestine, her first solo exhibition took place in Steinmatzki Gallery in Jerusalem. In 1943, she opened a studio in the old city of Jerusalem, which was sadly destroyed in 1948. She also began to study sculpture by Moshe Sternhuus. and I envy you because you will probably have the opportunity to see those sculptures live. I have to admit, I have never seen those sculptures by Keita Ephraim Michaels as I was in Israel. In 1945, she executed a statue of Mordechai Schnorstein, the owner of the Tel Aviv Zoo. And just beside this statue of Mordechai Schnorstein is a sculpture presenting her husband, Joseph Marcus. From 1948, she lived in Ramat Gan, where she died in 1970. In Israel, Ephraim Marcus' art was appreciated, and she held several exhibitions. However, her German/European background was consistently emphasized, placing her work outside the contemporary canon of Israeli art. This focus sparked debates among art critics, such as one in the newspaper Davar, who posed the question, and I quote, "Is she a German artist? Yes or no?" So she was quite often also labeled as a German expressionist. It seems that this demand for categorization hindered the full recognition and appreciation of her art in Israel. In Ma'arif, one critic questioned whether the artist could free herself from, and I quote, "European melancholy, despair, and mental calculation, or one might say, German traits, or whether she would find her way into the delicate, charming, and conventional Israeli landscape." As we see, she tried. However, her landscapes were never considered sufficiently Israeli, so to speak. Instead, they were often interpreted as post-impressionistic reminiscences of her youthful stay in Paris. To conclude, three above-mentioned artists are just case studies of ephemeral and difficult to define position of Jewish female artists from Breslau. Only few information, paper clips, and exhibition catalogs help me to reconstruct their still incomplete life and art paths. The names of several of these artists are only known: Elfriede Braun, Dora Czapski, Magda Dresdner, Betty Hirsch, Lotte Jabloński, Charlotte Kübner, Emmy Pick, Dora Potocki, Sophie Schlesinger, Käthe Süßmann, and Thea Weisenberg, but little else. Maybe there was no great women artists in Breslau. So, for example, Clara Sachs never attained the fame of her friend Eugen Spiro, while Paula Grünfeld, Keita Ephraim Marcus, and Sarah Margot Abraham were not considered as modern as their expressionist colleagues such as Heinrich Tischler or Isidor Aschheim. In this sense, their fate was like that of other non-Jewish female artists from Breslau. They were doomed to the conservative, bourgeois tastes of their audience, who expected a certain thematic repertoire, like women, flowers, children, landscape. And yet, their presence in cultural life was visible and significant, also through their ties to women's organizations, which constituted a whole new area of female activity. In this sense, women's art in Breslau was strictly intertwined, as I said before, with social changes taking place in the city and the new role of Jewish women. But as you see, this chapter and this research is still incomplete, and we still do not know if it ever will. Thank you very much for your attention.
Literally here in these spheres, unknown women, even the Marcus that should have been better known, but I don't think so. And yeah, Mar, do you want to start the discussion or
Yeah.
invite people to
Yeah.
ask, comment?
Yes, if anyone have a question, please raise your hand and I will unmute you. Ask to unmute you. Jan.
So thank you very much. It was indeed very interesting and also lots of new things. I have a question, maybe I just missed about who was the artist who also did tapestry art, tapestries, the second artist? Can you hear me?
Seems like we lost connection.
Yeah, I think she's frozen.
Yeah.
Okay, so we just wait.
Yes.
All right, we lost her altogether. Let's see if she can reconnect.
No, it's a new.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm trying to reach her by phone, but there is no answer. I'll try again, but it seems that the connection is totally lost now. Let's try again.
Here she is.
She's here?
She is coming. Yes.
Okay, good.
Lost again. disconnected again.
Oh, well, here she is. Okay.
So, can you hear me? I mean, yes. So thank you
Marian,
for the.
just a moment. I want to, gosh, unmute. Okay.
Okay. Can you now hear us?
I can hear you now. Yes, can you hear
Okay,
me?
great.
Yes.
Yes. So, Marian, the question.
Yeah, so it was a very interesting lecture, and also is new artist. So my question is, maybe you just missed. There was an artist with also tapestries. What was her name? She was I think she was the
Berta
second.
Hada. There were many artists, like, you mean the Jewish Jewish artists or
Jewish.
non-Jewish artists?
The Jewish.
The tradition of modern tapestry workshops was pretty famous in Breslau. It was established in the Breslau Art Academy by Else Wislicenius, and she also had some Jewish students. Among them was Berta Hada, and probably I should have mentioned her, but also the artworks are very scarce that she left. She was the art teacher in the Jewish school in Breslau, and together with this student, she taught them how to do the tapestry. And one tapestry actually survived in the United States, a beautiful one. It was recent. I mean, the reproduction of this was recently displayed on the exhibition, Putting Things Back, the exhibition that I curated, the tapestry presenting the Ark of Noah. And yes, there was, and not only tapestry, but also the puppet makers. There were also several artists who were involved in this. But there is also a sad side of the story, because the first time when you hear about those artists, those artisans, female artisans, is from the Jewish press after 1933, because this was the time when they of course they were banned to exhibit, to take part in general exhibitions in Breslau, and it caused the intensification in the exhibition life on the side of the Jewish community, because it was not only to activate the Jewish community, to give them some hope and also some cultural life, but also to provide those artists with the means to live so they can sell their artworks. So, for example, those tapestry artists and the puppet makers, they exhibited their artworks mostly in 1930s. But you're right, this is also still unknown chapter and really poorly researched.
Yeah, indeed, and very interesting. Thank you. I have to read about it more. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, if you're interested in researching this, there is I think, pretty interesting material in German Jewish press from that time, which is also available online in compact memory there. So, yeah. And also you have the access to this newspaper that was published in Israel throughout the years. I don't think that I think it ceased to be published. This Verband der ehemalige Breslauer, it was the association of the former Breslauers. You have plenty of articles on artists who emigrated, or on Breslauer artists who emigrated to Israel and to other countries, but also about those who were murdered during the Holocaust, and also about the pre-war Jewish cultural life. pretty rich material to research.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There is a question of Elana Shapira. I don't know if she's still with us, but I can read it. She asked, what professional networks did Sarah and Marcus have?
Miriam, I couldn't hear. Could you please repeat it?
I said it's a question from Elana Shapira. I don't know if she's still with us, but she posted in a chat. And she asks if Sarah Margot Abraham and Käthe Ephraim Marcus had any connections, professional network in Berlin.
I don't know about the Sarah Margot Abraham, but Käthe Ephraim Marcus, as I said, she had a solo exhibition in Berlin. No catalog. I have found no traces whether the catalog was published. Probably it was a very small exhibition in some private gallery. I think she had those opportunities because she was traveling with Josef Marcus a lot, and they were both very active in this cultural circles in Germany. So Käthe Ephraim Marcus, absolutely yes, she was active on the Berlin art scene. Sarah Margot Abraham, I cannot remember any of the Berlin exhibitions.
Okay, thank you. Now I have also a question. What was whether there was any support from Jüdische Frauenbund, from the Jewish women organization, for these artists? Did they act as patrons in any way, or help them organize exhibitions, or was there any support from the women Jewish organization?
No, nothing I know about. I think it was rather that those artists support the activities of this Frauenbund organization, because the Frauenbund, this union of Jewish women, it was a charitable organization. So they themselves relied on donations that they became from different sources. But if you ask me about the supporters from the side of the members of the Jewish community in Breslau for the artist, it was pretty intense. The Franklicher Stiftung, it was the eldest charitable organization in Breslau ever established in 19th century. They founded stipends for both Jewish and non-Jewish students of art academy. There were also very active Jewish art collectors, especially at the beginning of the 20th century, who were admirers both of impressionistic art and very modern avant-garde expressionistic art. And they supported those artists. And this example that I presented, the portraits of Ismar Littmann by Käthe Ephraim Marcus, he was one of the most significant figures on the Breslau art market. He owned a huge collection of modern art, not only of Jewish artists, but he was keen on supporting Jewish artists too, to the extent that he planned to open a branch of the Silesian Museum, a modern art gallery. His collection was so huge that he could afford to loan artworks to the Silesian Museum. But unfortunately, after 1933, and after Littmann was banned to exercise his profession as a lawyer, he committed suicide in 1934. And this is a very tragic, but also sadly typical story of many Jewish collections.
And what happened to his collection?
Oh, it was dispersed, and but the story of restitution of his collection because I think his sons, part of his family, managed to escape, and they escaped to United States, and those trials and the restitution trials of the Littman family are one of the most famous ones among the restitution trials. They could only do it because someone managed to find a handwritten inventory, partial inventory of the artworks that Ismail Littman owned. And he owned not only, as I said, the Breslau Jewish artist, he owned the general, the great Impressionist art and Expressionist art, but also the classical art. He was a really large-scale art mäzen, the art collector.
But okay, I will. That's just the last. So, but none of them, neither women organization or Littman, they didn't really support specifically these women artists. They were just Littman, as you said, great women organization capability, didn't have a capability to support them, but he also didn't paid special attention just to these women artists.
Yeah, I have not encountered any information that these women organizations supported the Jewish women artists on institutional level. Mm-hmm. We can say that that the fact that Paula Ollendorf probably commissioned her portrait by Käthe Ephraim Marcus might be some sort of act of support. Mm-hmm. But we do not know anything about the circumstances in which this portrait was created. Käthe Ephraim Marcus was involved in the Jewish women organization, in this Union of Jewish Women in Breslau, also because of her involvement in the Zionist circles and in general in this in the circles of Jewish charitable organizations, due to also to her husband.
Mm. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone another question? Please raise your hand and I will unmute you.
Yes, Andre.
Yes, hello. First, I want to thank you for the lecture, and I want to comment you said about the last artist that it's hard to say about her style because she was an European style. And I want to comment this that I think that that was a turn in the end of the 19th century when the style moved from the national style to the international style. So, for example, Art Nouveau, every modern styles in the 20th century were already international. So that's why I think that the artists they were could be in a way that were they learning. So not from their nationality, they create not from their nationality, but from their school, from the period when they learning. That's why I think that she was in this. So that's all. So thank you.
Well, I agree and disagree. Well, I didn't mean that while she was still active in Breslau before 1933. Her style was rather, she leaned toward expressionism because this was the language of the expression that she found most appropriate. But what I meant in this lecture with this struggle to define her art was how the art critics in Israel struggled to define her art, because she did not fit in the New Horizons, for example, environment, milieu. And she was, even if you look at her images, she was pretty eclectic. I mean, she experimented also with different styles, but on the other hand, this label of her coming from Germany and being European artist also expressed in this discourse that described her art as melancholic, despair. This was something that was laying a shadow behind her, so to speak. I mean, in Israel, I think it might be also a reason why she turned into sculpture. She never, I have never read any review prior 1933 saying that Käthe Ephraim Marcus tried sculpture. I think this was her Israeli experience, so to speak. And perhaps she looked for her own individual way to express her experience in Israel through the sculpture as a new medium. And maybe that was, so to speak, something that defines her here. But as I said, in terms of paintings and itself, of the graphic, she was more of a painter than a graphic designer. She struggled with critics, I think. she had a problem because they tried to compare her to what was going on the Israeli art scene at the time, and she somehow didn't fit due to her German background.
Okay. If I think, just small comment. Well, she was definitely not the only one in Israel. Coming back that number of artists that now get on a front. There are definitely, number of.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. She somehow is her example is somehow typical also for not female artists coming from Germany.
Yeah. Okay, so if there are no any other questions, I think we can thank Goshka that in spite of all the technical threats at the beginning, we managed to at the end have a very nice lecture and learn about the Breslau women Jewish artists. And I hope that the book will include them, right? You are preparing also a publication that will include
to some small extent, but well, I'm always keen to return to the Breslau art stories. That's very close to my heart. So as a scholar, thank you so much for invitation. And
thank you.
I'm also glad that despite all the difficulties we had from different sides, we managed to meet. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for all your questions.
Okay, so thank you, and we'll see you next week. Do you want to say more about the lecture next week?
I don't have the information with me. Maybe Leo is here and to say some words or to speak. Moment, in Leo, just in a moment. Asking, hi Leo.
Hello, sorry I'm on the bus. Yes, next week we'll be hearing from Elia Asayag, and she'll be speaking about Jewish women embroiderers from Morocco. So it'll be a whole new topic. for us. Looking forward to seeing everyone next week.
Okay.
Oh, here we go.
Great. Miriam, we didn't hear you.
Yeah, I just said thank you once again and see you next week.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
ביי, להתראות לכולם.